Hey guys, all right, so I want to go through how I increase my omega-3 consumption, what kind of foods that I'm buying, what kind of foods that I'm eliminating also to correct that omega-6 to omega-3 ratio, which I personally like to try and get 1-to-1 ideally. They say around 4-to-1, so 4 times more omega-6 than 3 is kind of the upper margin of what's acceptable. When we go beyond that, when we start consuming excess omega-6 compared to the omega-3, we start to enter a pro-inflammatory state that is also prone to oxidation. So the omega-6 are highly inflammatory if we go overboard, especially if we're lacking the omega-3. The omega-6 also tends to compete for access into the body. It competes with omega-3. So even as we increase the omega-6 consumption, even further deficiencies in omega-3 and its ability to be absorbed is further worsened. So omega-6, the excess of omega-6 has been here for about 1 century, because in the 1900s, they started to use seed oils that are basically seeds in the field: soybeans, sunflower, rape seeds. And I've said this many times, basically it's a highly fabricated process that damages the molecules within the fats that create radicals and oxidative toxic byproducts. So this is what I do. First of all, I avoid the vegetable oils. Therefore, I don't use any oils for cooking. I use rendered duck fat that I can get at the IGA or the butcher. I cook with animal fats. I cook with butter. I'll cook with lard. I'll keep the bacon grease. I'm going to cook with the highly saturated animal fats that don't oxidize and produce toxic chemicals while I'm cooking. All right, or they're not mutating on the shelf in the grocery store. So I do avoid all of the oils that I cook with, and I use animal fats. That's one way of reducing it. I also look at the packaged foods, and anytime some packaged food is present, it's gonna be these omega-6 seed/vegetable oils that are not vegetables. So anytime we're shopping in the middle section, whether we're having Triscuits, a nice little wrap, sauces, condiments, any packaged food, they're going to be using these seed oils. It's dirt cheap. It's 3 times less expensive. So coconut oil really isn't being used much, lard, etc. So this is what you got to do. You turn your package. If you see vegetable oils in there, avoid it. That's the first way of correcting. It's reducing the omega-6. Okay. The next thing, what do I use to get a good amount of omega-6 within my diet? Okay. So we know that tuna fish has a little bit of omega-3 in it. So this one is showing 100 milligrams for half a can. So 200 milligrams. So 200 milligrams. There we go. All right. Next thing, sardines. Make sure that the sardines are in water. And if you're taking it in olive oil, make sure that they didn't just put a splash of olive oil and the rest canola. Be safe, use the spring water. And again, this is 1.5 for the whole can. So 1,500 milligrams of omega-3. It's a little blurry, just trust me. Next, salmon roe, caviar, another good source of healthy fats, omega-3s. So I consume also caviar. I also, look, okay, if you're having trouble getting these sources, it's okay to supplement with the omega-3s. What you want to do is you want to look on the side, okay, and you want to get that DHA and EPA and add those. So for me, this would be 500 milligrams of omega-3, not the 1,000 up there. Okay, 1,000 milligrams per day, probably not enough to fix your ratios. 3,000, 5,000, that's where I range. So once in a while, I like to bolus myself with 5 grams a day. But usually I like to have 3 grams a day at least, okay? Keep in mind to do your research about the kind of fishes that have higher mercury levels. Keep in mind that these could technically become oxidized. Keep in mind that there's a difference between omega-3 and cod liver oil. Omega-3 comes from the skin of fatty fishes, and cod liver comes from the liver of cods, which increases the vitamin A and vitamin D daily requirements. Pretty much all of your A and D is completed with cod liver. So be careful not to overconsume that. I usually like to split up the cod liver can in about 3 days. So I'll eat 1/3 one day, 1/3 and 1/3. This gives me at least a guaranteed 10 milligrams of omega-3 per week, which if it's 3 times 7, I'm aiming for around 20 milligrams per week of omega-3. And we have eggs. It's worth going for the free range, for the pastured eggs, or if you don't have access. Oops, the video cut. Talking about the eggs, make sure it's free range or that it's supplemented with flax seeds that can increase the omega consumption. Over here, you see the value nutritionally of eggs that are free range or supplemented with flax seeds to increase the omega-6 consumption. Check out on the bottom, okay? It literally touches, besides the vitamin C, on every single essential micronutrients to some extent. I eat 4 eggs per day, sometimes 8 if I'm busy, just to make sure I'm getting in there everything, the good fat, good protein, and a lot of these essentials. So with 4 eggs, you're completing a good part of your essential daily needs for vitamins. Eggs are extremely nutritious. Therefore, there's no point where this extremely nutritious and complete superfood becomes toxic to you, okay? The shunning away from eggs was based on the wrong conclusions on saturated fat and cholesterol, which do not cause heart disease.